Hello, everyone, fans of the National Unity Club. I am Pepe Escobar. I'm addressing you from Paris in NATO territory, and I have the immense honor and pleasure to be in a conversation today with Alexander Babakov, the Vice Speaker of the Russian Duma, a great economist and an absolutely world-class Russian statesman. Alexander, welcome to our conversation. It's an immense pleasure for me. Thank you. On several themes that you pointed out, one of them is BRICS. The other one is the supine position of the European Union, which we saw once again at Davos. And the other one, of course, is which is this has been ringing in my head for quite a while. Maybe I'll start with this one because it's directly related to the US Russia possible reset of a relationship. Do you do you see the Trump negotiators fully understanding, or maybe not understanding at all, that the core positions of Russia vis-a-vis Ukraine, they will not be changed by all means by President Putin, and we all know what that means. Means Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson, Zaporizhia part of the Russian Federation, Crimea more than obviously, and the right of Russian speakers who live in other parts of Ukraine to keep the language and to keep doing what they were doing before. And of course, in the long term, or even in the short term, in fact, the impossibility of living side by side with a terrorist or criminal organization in Kiev. There is absolutely no way, and all of us who follow Russia know that President Putin would sidestep any of these imperatives. Do you think that Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, not to mention Kirill Dmitriev himself, and I would like to be provocative about that, do they understand that these are immovable conditions, and without that, it's absolutely impossible to have any sort of agreement? Or are we in the middle of an opera piece or a kabuki that can go on for months with no tangible results while the special military operation keeps rolling on the battlefield?
Ну, хороший вопрос. Вы достаточно много
You have given a lot of answers
в самом
in
вопросе
your
дали
in your
ответ.
in your question if someone would listen attentively.
Что
You
касается
know, those people
переговорщиков,
that
ну,
negotiate,
все-таки
they
переговорщики,
do the will of those
выполняют
who
волю
sent them,
и поручения
their leaders, right?
и своих
So I
руководителей.
think that
Я
President
думаю, что
Putin and
Владимир
Mr.
Путин
Trump, they are
и Дональд
more or
Трамп,
less, they
они
gave them the picture,
как бы
the
обрисовали
terms, the conditions, the perimeters
параметры поведения
of the
и
conversation. But
разговора.
I want to
Но я
highlight
бы хотел
one
подчеркнуть
question.
один
We all
вопрос, который
understand
очень важен.
clearly that
Мы
what
же
takes
прекрасно
place
понимаем,
today
что
in
то, что
Ukraine,
происходит сегодня
and
на
that what our
Украине,
president
об этом
said,
говорил наш
just
президент, не
political
только
leadership
многие
that represent
крупные
our
деятели
state, that it's
представляющих нашу
again
страну.
important to
Это очень
remind
важно, просто еще раз
that the
напомнить, что
first
первоисточником
source, it's not the
этого
problem of
конфликта
Ukraine
является
as
не
it is.
проблема Украины как таковой.
We are
Мы лишь
solving the
решаем
fruits
те
of that
последствия
military
военного путча, который
revolution
состоялся
that
в
took
2014
place in
году. В 2014
2014.
году на Украине произошел
The leaders
вооруженный
of the
переворот,
Western countries
поддержанный
supported that
специальными странами
revolution.
Запада.
And a long
И в
time,
течение длительного
Kiev
времени
was
Киев
killing their own people
уничтожал фактически свой
that
собственный
later
народ.
on was able
Потом
to
нашел в себе
come to
силы
Russia
обратиться
with
к России
having
с
referendums,
проведенных референдумов
and they said their desire to work
и
and
выскажешь свое желание жить и
live
работать
independently and then enter
самостоятельно,
Russia.
суверенно, а потом
But that's not
завоевывать
actually
мир.
what I
Я не
wanted
про
to
это
say.
хотел
The
сказать.
first
Первоисточником этого конфликта
That's
является
the reason for the conflict. The
безоговорочное
NATO
приближение
coming
стран
to the
НАТО
borders
вооруженных
of Russia
сил
fully
к границам
loaded
России
with guns,
и полное
fully
игнорирование
ignoring the right of
суверенитета
sovereignty
России,
of
ее
Russia in
права
the
на свое
framework of the
мнение в рамках
borders
тех
that we
границ,
have.
в которых мы находимся.
You
Но
can't behave
так же
yourself
нельзя вести
like they
себя
did in a
нигде,
yard that
ни
you live in a
в стране, где
neighborhood,
ты живешь,
and a city in the world, you must respect others and yourself. Russia for a long time was in this overloaded by Western countries. They kept coming kept coming against Russia, and they already were in a discussion to have their weapons in Ukraine. So what I see that they walked into my house, in the hallway they already started putting their rockets. Of course, our president said that he talked to the world power, that he spoke to them and talked to them, and not just declare. He almost, you can say, begged them, please don't handle yourself this way with Russia. West did not take his words seriously, and they say, okay, we started to make order on territories that Ukraine did not take in. We took those territories in. We took them into Russia. They came to us, asked us for the help. They did all that they need to do legitimately. But then another thing is important. We have demonstrated to the West that we don't agree that Russia is being ignored as a sovereign state. We did not attack anybody. We were just restoring. And we continue to restore the status of our sovereignty. So if we do want to solve this conflict, first of all, we have to take out the first reasons. And in this case, Europe fully ignores us. Europe doesn't hear us. They don't want to take in that they are guilty themselves. It was them who promised when the USSR was taken apart that the things that take place now that they wouldn't take. So they will have to learn the lesson with different terms. So America is probably the only Western country that realizes that the first reason of this contract was the NATO development to the east without any limitation. If Americans do understand that now, there is a chance that in this question they will move towards solving a conflict. The first reason, we have to clearly understand that, connected with that, but the conflict that started due to that first reason, it called to life what we speak about now. What should we already forget about? We should remember it, but not talk about it. That's Nazis. First, Western countries said that they want to physically destruct Russian people. That's what they announced. Not just Russia, but Russian people. They forgot about it. Now they say different things. They have grown with their own hands the Nazist regime in Ukraine. It was hard even to imagine. You ask Ukrainians, majority of them are against that. But once they planted that regime that was financed by West with a fascism ideology, that with the hands of that leadership, they're trying to hurt Russia. Of course, Russia will stand against it, and proving at the battlefield that it will not stop. Look at the Western rhetoric. 2-3 years ago, they discussed when and how they will hit Russia with a last strike. And now they want a ceasefire regime as soon as possible, because everything is not just the way they planned. So here, I put my bet on Americans because they're pragmatical, because they understand that you cannot touch Russia as a nuclear weapon holder. You can overcome that country to take away the first reason, which is quite okay, it's healthy reason. Move away NATO. Then we can have a dialogue of what we can have in the future of our relationship. But here, unfortunately, for the West, in some areas, we have to put a question about how to liquidate or how to remove the regime that we have in Kiev now. It's this anti-human regime, and it's based on the principles that by the whole humanity that given on the Nuremberg process. in 1945, and all those point of views that goes against humanity, we have to count that in. So today, it's a very complicated process. But if you put it in logically into parts, that the first reason is there, then something that does not fit in with the humanity, not just Russia, the whole world can get along with that. As to put away the leadership that connects us with Nazis, and next we can discuss how can we form new borders for the new states or whatever would take place at Ukrainians' territory. Look at them. Look at those states. You speak that language. It's a normal, healthy situation when people living at any territory not only they speak the language they want, but their native language. Why should we put it into some super political decision? It's an absurd. For some people it's normal, and in Ukraine, no, you have to fight with weapon against speaking your own language. So I think we need to continue the dialogue with Americans because they're close. They're the ones that are most closest to the solution of the situation. But those who are outside of that understanding, they really need to think about it and really see if they can be included in that process.
Well, Alexander, we cannot expect the current political leadership of the European Union to even start to understand what you just delineated. We know that there's no EU. NATO runs the EU. NATO basically.
Yes, sorry to interrupt you, apologize. You say that correct. They don't even think about their own nations. They can't make them happy because they just, it's an elementary logic that they refuse from the energy, cheap energy for their own people. I'm not speaking about Russia either. This is the basic of economical development and using that energy that nations would win over. Instead, European bureaucracies that put the politics into the process, they destroy the economy and life of their own people. But the civilians of those countries that delegated them the right to manage the country and the EU leadership, it's a nonsense. To expect from them that they will have a healthy approach? No, because they can't even save themselves. So I think that you are right. Here, the changes are there. They have to be there. That's not our rules to get into other countries. We just will hope that the healthy mind would take over. But we shouldn't waste the time to requalification of those citizens. What we need to do, you need to solve those things with those who are able. That's America, that's our Chinese partners, our Indian partners, and other countries that are having this, not because they love Russia greatly, but just because they're purely pragmatic. We ask, don't love Russia, respect Russia for its sovereignty, and we also will treat others greatly.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Alexander. Okay, instead of dwindling a little bit of Europe, we already know how they are committing political suicide. I prefer to talk about the future, BRICS. So I have a very straightforward question to you regarding BRICS because it looks like what the great Yevgeny Primakov defined as the RIC in the late 1990s apparently is getting back together again. We just had a confirmation by BRICS Sherpas these past few days, and it needed a little bit of reconfirmation, that the Reserve Bank of India is fully on board now to try to get the idea of BRICS Pay on the table at the BRICS summit in India later this year. As I'm sure our audience knows, that BRICS Pay is being tested for a while already, since the summit in Kazan. A little more than a year ago, a year and 3 months ago. But there was an initial deadline that the test will go until 2027. Apparently, now the deadline is this year because the Indians want to put the idea of BRICS Pay for all BRICS members on the table later this year. And this is immense because of all those mechanisms that BRICS are testing. BRICS Pay is one of them, one of several. This one is a very simple payment system where you bypass the US dollar, you bypass sanctions, and you bypass SWIFT in one go. So this is on the interest of everyone, every BRICS member nation, and also the BRICS partners. Can you imagine if BRICS adopts BRICS Pay officially? The partners will probably adopt it later on. And this is a practical way of bypassing US dollar, sanctions, SWIFT, and a monopolistic international financial system. So if the Indians pull it off, and if the RIC, Russia, India, China, pull it off together and sell the idea to the rest of BRICS, this is going to be the big game changer of 2026.
BRICS appearing is based on the multipolar. It's a fact now, but it's just not the multipolarity was attractive to make decisions, or most arguments for BRICS to even birth itself. By the ideology, the countries that were in BRICS, they say that they are all equal, not based on the sizes or geographical location. These are the countries that want to create together such a system of relationship that would work for the interest of all states. It's not a fantasy, it's not illusion. It's possible. Even after 1945, Roosevelt and Stalin discussed the world currency, looking at the point of view that there's a convenient instrument for most countries for the development. All countries have a right to develop. That's what they discussed, but it was not successful due to the physical death or whatsoever. And the dollar that became a master, that's already was representing a different ideology, just one state, not multiple states. That's where we have the one polar world. Now BRICS countries unite to help economically, to monitor. Look how many institutes are developed inside BRICS, cultural, social. That's a lot more than just BRICS, a lot more than just economy, but economy is the foundation. So if they create and stimulate the development of appearing such unions or allies, where countries feel equal, they have equal rights, we just simply need to say about the instrument that would service their economy. That's how we work. Financial situation is the key. It might not be the only one, but it's highly important. It's a way how you pay money. It's walking away for the overpayment to the same USD or any other currency just because it's a world instrument. Banking systems, insurance systems stand behind the US dollar, right? But if we speak about that, removing that delta for that globalism, we economize a lot of resources. Even the oil that has quotes and the oil price would be formed inside the countries that are united in BRICS, they will have another price, lower price, because there's no artificial payment for the London Stock Exchange. So the West, in its own time, turned a regular financial colonies. We shouldn't hide it. These were colonies. So today, the developing process in BRICS, they're based on other rules, different rules, the rules that are convenient and more acceptable for the most of the world. Now we need next instruments. Of course, it would be created, and not as against dollar. We say that our president says we don't refuse from USD. They refuse us to be able to pay in USD. He says, okay, you don't want us to be there, we will have to work in a different direction. It's a natural process. If they would have new projects tomorrow that would unite these countries, not because somebody wants to fight the West, that's not the target. The target is how to develop your own economy and the economies of other countries. That would be looking as a fight, as a battle, but that's not the goal. To go over sanctions is not a goal. What we need to do is there should be an economy of the state where whatever sanction you plug in, it will not work. We know what we have 32,000 sanctions against Russia, none of them work. China have proved that it doesn't work. But if you look at the European leadership behavior, they see that Trump just said that he'll turn on sanctions. They're already scared because their economy, their mentality, and their future, the presence and present and the future, all depends on American position. They're afraid. Russians are not. And also, BRICS has a perspective. We should remember the huge potential on the resources and industrial potential that is already in the hands of the countries that are united in BRICS. Please remember that. I think that those people that have a very pragmatic point of view, they understand and they realize that they shouldn't fight us instead of they should be friends with us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alexander. My next question is directly related to everything that you have been expounding, and it has to concern oil. Of course, the petrodollar, which is the key of American domination for, we can say, at least 70 years, 80 years, and the advance of nations who do trading of their energy outside of the petrodollar, which was the number one reason for Trump to snatch President Maduro out of Caracas. And very important, correct me if I'm wrong, the official Russian position is that Nicolas Maduro and his wife have to return to Caracas. And at the same time, the official Russian position is that any attack on Iran can completely destabilize West Asia. Apparently, the Trump administration is not listening to these warnings, which is very, very complicated because this is a direct clash between the American system and Russia. We can say that for a century at least, the cornerstone of American foreign policy is control of oil, meaning it's not that we need to own the oil. We need to control how the oil moves. And of course, Venezuela, Iran, and Russia are in a completely different path. Venezuela, they were exporting most of their oil to China, outside of the petrodollar. Iran trades their energy outside of the petrodollar. And Russia exports a lot of its energy already outside of the petrodollar. So this puts the US and Russia on a collision clash, which is more or less inevitable. How Moscow can devise a way to, I would say, placate the imperial wrath, because sooner or later, snatching Russian oil tankers or shadow fleet, etc., maybe could be the first move. Soon, somebody at the Pentagon or rogue CIA cells will come up with, let's block Russian tankers in the Baltics, in the Black Sea, everywhere. So this could get easily out of control.
Everything
все, о
what you
чем вы
talk
говорите,
about,
это так или иначе
it's
связано
connected with
с
ignoring
игнорированием
and
и прямым
direct
нарушением тех международных
a direct
отношений,
disorder
которые
in an
договорены
international
с
relationship that we
Штатами.
had for a long
И Россия
time. And
выступает
Russia
здесь
stands
за
here
не
not just
просто
for keeping,
сохранение,
but
она
it
выступает за
stands for
сохранение и
keeping and
укрепление
strengthening those
тех
international
международных институтов,
institutes that the
которые
people have
человечество
created,
само же создало,
coming out
исходя
of the
из опыта
experience of the previous
предыдущего
World War
Второй
II.
мировой войне. И
And the
Организация Объединенных Наций,
UN,
какая бы сегодня
whatever
критика не шла в
way we
адрес этой
try to
организации, это
criticize
пока
this organization, but
единственная
it's probably
организация, которая была
the
создана в тот
only
период времени
organization that
и
was created
направленная на
to solve
решение вопросов,
the
самых сложных
situation
вопросов
with
между странами
difficult
путем,
situations
прежде
between the
всего,
countries.
дипломатического
First of
подхода,
all, we need to
обсуждения
understand that
позиций
this had to
и
be done in a
такого
right
общественного
way
отношения
to
к
analyze
анализу
these or
тех или иных
those events.
событий.
So
И
I
я думаю,
think that
что
Russia
Россия
today
сегодня,
and
Китай, да
China,
большинство
majority
стран
of countries, they talk
должны
about
выступать за
keeping
сохранение позиций, укрепление
the
позиций. Не только
positions of
Организация
the
Объединенных Наций, но
UN
и
or any other
ряда других
organization,
институтов
international
международных,
institute,
которые так
because
или
they
иначе регулируют.
regulate
Это если
this way
вопрос
or the other
судоходства, это
way
вопросы собственности, и нейтральности там,
the
вод
way that you rule
морских и
in
так далее. То есть
sea
это
waters
вопросов много.
or legal
Но
ways, but we
нельзя нам
cannot
опуститься до уровня
go to the Middle
средневековья,
Ages
когда все вопросы
where
решаются
we
только политически.
solve all the
Потому
questions
что
only
даже
by
самый
strength,
сильный сегодня
because even the
может
strongest
оказаться
one
в
today could
ситуации
be in
слабого.
a
Это, к
weak
сожалению, или
position.
не к сожалению, но это парадокс
Unfortunately, this
жизни
is the
нашей.
paradox of
Поэтому
life,
мы
and we
должны
have
стремиться к
to
тому, чтобы
go towards
все-таки, защищая
protection of
институты,
those
мы
institutes. We
продолжали
have to
предлагать
continue ways
пути
of
решения
solution,
компромиссов не
compromises,
военным
not
путем.
by military,
Для тех же, кто
but the
хочет
ones
решать
who
вопрос
wants
военным
to
путем, наш
solve it
президент ответил,
by
что
military. Our
попробуйте.
president
И
has
я думаю, что не
answered.
в
He
интересах
said, okay, well,
многих
go ahead and
государств
try it. And I don't think
исключить
other countries are quite at
возможности
interest
России на
to
этом
try
пути.
Russia
Да,
at
речь
this
идет, пока
point.
речь идет там
So
о
right now they
эпизодах,
talk of a
танки,
boat
ракетной
or
войной.
two
Здесь много
vessels,
юридических
but there's
аспектов. Во-первых,
unfortunately a lot of aspects.
пока не чисто
You know,
российских
just
танкеров никто
purely
не забирал.
Russian boats are not
Вот, пока
taken
речь идет
away.
о том, что
It's
там
either
либо
part of
часть
the
экипажа,
team
либо,
or
может быть, там
some
нефть
oil,
присутствует, еще
something.
что-то. Но это,
You know,
это
these are
сложные такие
complicated
вопросы.
issues, but I would
Но
not
я бы не
advise
советовал
anybody,
никому,
not just
не только я,
myself, who am I?
я-то кто,
You know, Russia will
Россия
never
бы не
advise
советовала
to
никому
anybody to
испытывать
try their
в данном
patience,
случае
try their
прочность
strength, how
принятия наших
strongly we
решений.
can take those
И уже
decisions.
неоднократно
We've
мы
spoken
говорили по
about the
Балтийскому
Baltics.
морю, что
If Europe
если
wants
Европа захочет
to block,
заблокировать, ну, потому что
maybe
ей так
they would
покажется
think it's right. But
правильным,
Europe
она
must
должна понимать,
understand
что
that the
ответ России
Russian
будет
answer would be very
понятным для
clear,
Европы,
but a
но
very
очень
heavy
тяжелым.
one.
И,
So
ну как
I
вообще,
cannot
я даже
even
не могу
understand
понять,
really
как может
how can
прийти
anybody
в
have in
любому
their head
политику,
such a
хотя
thought.
приходит европейскому
Sometimes it hits a
политику
European mind that the
желание
desire to cut
усилить
down
Россию в
Russia
военном
in
плане. Они
militant
уже
way. You know, they've tried to
попытались
do
сделать на
it in
Украине. Они уже
Ukraine.
на
They've
Украину
sent to
отправили
Ukraine
все
all
виды
types of
оружия,
weapons,
они
except for the
приказывают.
nuclear weapons.
Ну,
Really, nothing
ничего не
works.
работает.
And
Но они
they
хотят,
see
и
it
они
doesn't
видят,
really
что не
work.
просто не работает,
Not
а
only
это
doesn't
получило
work, but also it
черную
has a
операцию. И
boomerang
тем же,
reaction that
казалось бы,
was
очевидные
quite
вещи
obvious
опять
to
реализовывать
put
и
together, replan
планировать.
anything like that. So I
Поэтому
wouldn't
я
want
бы не
to
хотел здесь
scare
никого пугать,
anybody,
но просто
but
не стоит с
don't try to
ядерным
play
государством,
games
таким как
with
Россия,
nuclear
а
state
у
like
нас сила не
Russia.
только в ядерном
And not only
государстве,
that
а
is
из-за
our strength, but
политического
also
руководства,
our
консолидации
leadership, the
общества
people that
вокруг
surround the
политического
leadership.
руководства,
And
что немаловажно.
it's very important issue,
Это очень
and it's a
редкое
rare
явление.
thing in nowadays.
Не надо
Shouldn't
проверять на
try
точность нас, а лучше
how strong we
задуматься
are.
и
Maybe they
пойти
should really think
на
and
поиск
put their energy into finding solutions and methods that will help them to solve the problems going around this militant way. So for us, for myself today, what they announced, you know, those politicians, it has no substance to it. There's kind of crazy ideas, and I still keep my hand on hope that it would change, that majority of the population will understand that this is not the future for the humanity, not in confrontation, but in the research or looking for a solution, respecting the sovereignty of the states together that are participating in this progress.
Thank you, Alexander. I think I have time maybe for our last question. So it's directed to you personally, your gut feeling, but also the pulse of the Duma. After all, you know what's going on in the Duma. Is there a feeling that the special military operation could still go on for the whole of 2026, even as this soap opera of the negotiations between Russia and the United States continue? And at the same time, does it look like the latest message by Mr. Oreshnik
No,
was understood by some sectors of Atlanticist sectors from the US to Europe?
Well, Oreshnik is just a demonstration that Russia has military and weapons like they don't have in the West. You know, we didn't really threat anybody. It's a signal. For a smart person, it's a signal. For a foolish one, probably it's not gonna help anyways. So talking about a special military operations, the special task by our presidents, we have to execute those. But since the tasks are connected to remove the root cause of the conflict, if before it was just removing the root cause of the conflict would be reached by the diplomatical ways, right? Diplomacy, well, that will help to fulfill the special military operation and the end of it. But if diplomacy part would take way over horizon, time-wise, of course, we're gonna have to do what our president says anyways. The disciplined citizens must do it. So, but we do believe in a correct position. We believe that we will reach the goals. And a question of time is just a question of, secondary things. The main thing is the result and probably assuredness in your strength. We've got both, right? We are assured what we have, and we do believe that we'll reach the result.
Thank you so much, Alexander. This has been an immensely enlightening conversation. I hope for people in Russia, but I also hope for a global audience, especially coming from you, a real insider, and with your beautiful humanistic spirit. That was wonderful. Thank you for the National Unity Club. I am Pepe here in NATO stand. Goodbye to all of you. Thanks very much.
Спасибо.
Thank you, Alex.